right to know. That's, of course, a goddamn code word, right to know. The public has no right to know secret documents. What the Times has done is placed itself above the law.
The year was 1969. The Cold War loomed, and I was a cog in the machinery of national security. I had worked for RAND, served in the Pentagon, and been to Vietnam. I tried to believe in the mission. But then, I discovered a secret. A history of lies spanning 4 presidencies, bound in blue covers, the Pentagon Papers. The report revealed the government knew the Vietnam War was unwinnable, yet kept sending young men to die. The gap between public statements and private knowledge was a chasm, a betrayal of the highest order. I looked at my children and thought of others' sons, drafted and sent to war on a foundation of falsehoods. The weight of this secret was crushing. It wasn't just information, it was evidence of a moral crime. My top-secret clearance now felt like a prison of conscience. I had to do something. But what? And at what cost? To reveal the truth would be seen as treason. I would risk everything, my freedom, my reputation, my family's well-being, yet remaining silent felt like a greater betrayal of my country's ideals and my own humanity. The stakes were immense, but the alternative was unthinkable. I knew I had to act. The idea of copying the papers was terrifying, but it wouldn't leave me. At a 1969 conference, I heard Randy Kaler, a war resistor, speak about going to jail for his beliefs. His courage moved me to tears. That was the moment I knew I had to act. My life inside the system was over, even if no one else knew it yet. Back at RAND, the Pentagon Papers sat in a safe. They were my responsibility and my opportunity. I had to get them out, to show the American people the truth. The logistics were daunting. How could I copy 7,000 pages without being caught? I thought of my friend Anthony Russo, who shared my disillusionment. I needed help. Involving someone else was a heavy burden, but the task was too big for one person. I imagined prison, thought of my family, but the suffering in Vietnam outweighed my fear. I had to find the courage to push past it. Exposing the truth was worth any price. The operation began on October 1st, 1969. My tool was a Xerox machine, not a weapon. After hours in my friend's office, my 13-year-old son Robert helped feed pages into the copier. I told him it was a peace project. He didn't know the full gravity, and I was glad. Each night I smuggled sections out of RAND, copying page by page, hour after hour. By day I was Dr. Daniel Ellsberg, analyst. By night a conspirator duplicating secrets. Over months the pile of copied pages grew, a mountain of evidence. With the copying done, I faced a new challenge: how to get the papers to the world. I first approached senators critical of the war, hoping Congress would act, but fear and political caution kept them silent. The system protected itself, even from the truth. My hopes for a congressional solution faded as the war raged on. The burden grew heavier. I realized I had to turn to the press. The First Amendment was meant to check government power. I reached out to the New York Times and reporter Neil Sheehan, whom I trusted. Handing over the papers was the final crossing of the Rubicon. No going back. Once the story was out, my life would change forever. I would be a fugitive, a traitor in the government's eyes. Meeting Sheehan in secret, I laid out the scope of the deception. I gave him the documents. The weight was no longer mine alone. Now, the free press would carry the torch. I could only hope they'd have the courage to light the flame. The truth was finally in motion. There was no turning back. On June 13, 1971, the New York Times published the first Pentagon Papers story. The secret was out. Relief and fear washed over me. The Nixon administration's response was immediate and furious. I was called the most dangerous man in America. The government obtained a restraining order, halting the Times after 3 articles, an unprecedented act of prior restraint. With the Times silenced, I had to keep the truth alive. I went underground, evading a nationwide FBI manhunt. I contacted other newspapers, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and more. Each time the government tried to stop one paper, another picked up the story. It became a cascade of defiance, journalistic solidarity in defense of the First Amendment. The government played legal whack-a-mole, but the truth kept surfacing. The story was too big to contain. The secret was now everyone's. 2 weeks in hiding felt like a lifetime. On June 28, 1971, I surrendered in Boston. I faced decades in prison under the Espionage Act. The government wanted to make an example of me. While my trial began, the newspaper's case reached the Supreme Court. In a landmark decision, the court ruled for the press. Prior restraint was unconstitutional. The Pentagon Papers could be published. It was a victory for freedom of the press. My own trial was different. The Nixon administration was obsessed with destroying me. They created the plumbers who broke into my psychiatrist's office seeking dirt to discredit me. Their illegal acts, break-ins, wiretaps were exposed. The judge declared a mistrial and dismissed all charges due to government misconduct. I walked out free, not because I was innocent of leaking, but because the government's crimes made a fair trial impossible. The storm had passed, and I was still standing. The truth had survived. The cost was high, but the principle endured. The system had been tested, and for a moment, had held. The fight for truth was not over. The Pentagon Papers didn't end the war overnight, but they exposed the lies and fueled the anti-war movement. They proved the power of a free press and the importance of whistleblowers in a democracy. One person, armed with the truth, can make a difference. The need for transparency and accountability is timeless. The risks I took were real, but so was my moral certainty. My highest loyalty was to the truth and the people, not to secrecy or power. I acted in hope that telling the truth could save lives. If I had to do it again, I would. The echo of that Xerox machine still resonates, a call to conscience for future generations. History is not just something that happens to us, it's something we can shape. In a democracy, the people have a right to know what's done in their name. That is a story worth fighting for.